Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching this week's edition of Mortgage Minute. As you know, I like to start off by giving you a little bit of a market update, in particular, an update about the bond market and mortgage rates. So let me give you that news. And unfortunately, to some degree, it's not the best. There's our rate grid on our website where you can see the current interest rate indications, as I call them. As you can see, we're basically definitely in a 7% market. You can still get some FHA VA loans under 7%, but for the most part, it's about a 7% plus market. So why is that? Well, if you look at the 10-year bond yield chart, which Jeff's going to pull up here, unfortunately, you can see some additional gradual rise in the 10-year bond yield since the end of last week, although thankfully today, we have been seeing a little bit of improvement after a kind of a rough week, particularly when you look at this chart from about yesterday morning to now. You see that pretty good jump in the bond yield. So what's going on there? Well, this week, in terms of the economic calendar, not a really packed calendar in terms of economic data, but probably the big one that I think did cause a pretty good spike in the 10-year bond yield was yesterday. The durable goods orders, that index came out stronger than expected, a 0.2% increase in August, when actually a drop was forecasted. Well, why the increase? Well, it turns out most of that increase, it looks to be military spending associated with kind of restocking armament supplies, et cetera, with the Ukraine war going on. So that really kind of spooked the bond market in particular, and I think is the predominant reason we saw the jump in bond yields yesterday. We actually, saw the 10-year bond yield get up over 465 when it was, back closer to 4.5 earlier this week. That's a pretty good jump, and of course, as you saw on the chart previously, at least the yield has dropped back below 4.6, around 4.58. So that's a little bit encouraging. Today, we did have initial jobless claims come out. They were increased, but only slightly. They were expected to be higher, a greater number of claims to be filed, but it was not that much. And then the GDP revision ended up being unchanged, 2.1% for the second quarter. That was forecasted to be slightly higher. So that resulted in a relatively quiet day in the bond market with, again, the yield trending a little bit better as the markets are closing. Tomorrow is a pretty important number, the core PCE, that's personal consumption expenditures. That's the Fed's favorite index to gauge inflation. The core PCE is the money spent on goods and services, excluding food and fuel, which are considered pretty volatile. And so by excluding those two items, the PCE is considered by the Fed to be a better barometer of overall inflation. And the forecast for this is for PCE to drop in August to 3.8%. It was over 4% in July. And then I think the background or the backdrop to all of this in terms of the current markets is the jitterness associated with the budget talks and the potential of a government shutdown, possibly by this weekend. So I think that backdrop is also creating some, jitters in the market. So that's where we're at in terms of the bond market and mortgage rates. Not the greatest of news, but at least we're getting some improvement today. And so we'll see what happens tomorrow with the PCE. Next thing I wanted to talk about, home prices. As you know, I've talked about a lot over the last few months. Home prices have been an interesting data point to observe because there's been some mixed signals about it. Well, I wanted to point out there was an article came out on the 26th on Yahoo Finance. Case-Shiller just issued their latest index numbers. And in July, they indicated there was again, these are national numbers, by the way, a 0.6% increase month over month. And this is a new high for the Case-Shiller index. And it also reflects that home prices have actually climbed for the 6th consecutive month after they had actually decreased a little bit going back to January, beginning of this year. The other thing that came out was the inventory of unsold listings declined quite a bit, 14.6%. So that's not good news. That means less inventory of homes for sale. And of course, less inventory is probably the main culprit that is keeping home prices elevated, at least in most markets. Um, excuse me. The other important number that came out today was existing home sales. Only about 4 million now, when they were over 6.5 million in early 2022. And then, given all of this, CoreLogic is forecasting that by July of 2024, we're going to see home prices up 3.5% gain year over year by July of 2024. So the overall news here, while some of you may be waiting for home prices to improve, I wouldn't bet on that. And in fact, the data is suggesting the opposite. Home prices have not fallen significantly in most markets. And in fact, at least half of the major markets in the country, they've actually gone up. So I think that's going to continue. So to the extent you're waiting for better rates, maybe it makes more sense. But understand, if those better rates occur, if rates do drop, I think that's actually going to push prices even higher. So just keep that in mind as you decide, when's the best time to really get serious about buying a home. So just wanted to give you that update. Home prices continue to set records. They're not jumping up in substantial ways, but they're definitely remaining firm, and definitely a bias toward the upside. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching and listening. Stay tuned next week for another edition to Mortgage Minute. I'm Art Alvarez at MortgageWorks, where we have the answers and they're on the house. So long. Take care.